Today, I'm delighted to have Baroness Susan Greenfield with me. Welcome, Susan.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here.
Before we start our discussion, I'd really like to share a really quick overview of your career, Susan. So you're a research neuroscientist with a particular focus on the brain mechanisms of
Mhm,
Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease.
mhm.
You have held research fellowship from really prestigious centers, the Department of Physiology of Oxford, the Collège de France in Paris, and NYU Medical Center as well, and received multiple honorary degree and international recognitions. And in particular, L'Ordre National de la Légion d'Honneur.
Right.
I have to mention.
Someone that can pronounce it properly, yes.
And in 2013, you founded Neuro-Bio, of
Yes.
which you're the CEO now,
Mm,
focusing on Alzheimer. And finally, you sit in the House of Lords.
mhm.
And that really leads me onto my first question, Susan. What are, at the moment, the main healthcare-related challenges that policymaking is trying to address?
Well, inevitably, if you're talking about politics, then that involves money. People don't just talk about the science, obviously. And one of the concerns really is funding certain drugs. So, for example, I know that the Alzheimer's Society are very anxious that these new drugs that are coming on stream for Alzheimer's, even though they are not particularly effective. They slow things down in the early stages of diagnosis. But even so, there's an anxiety that NICE will not approve these for use. And therefore, that if only rich people can have them, then clearly that's a problem. The other issue that relates to resources is how you screen people. So let's say you have Alzheimer's. How are you going to know whether you're going to be a beneficiary of these drugs? How do you know how far you've gone? What are the screening facilities available? So the kind of preoccupations that I'm encountering in the House of Lords are not scientific ones, not even ones questioning how good or bad a treatment is, but more how can it be rolled out? How much will it cost? Yeah. And how can we enable people without bankrupting the taxpayer to benefit from the new advances?
Hmm. I
Mm.
understand. And are issues such as health equity also addressed? And we know all the challenges that you've mentioned, resources as being one. Are these that are still being discussed?
Yes, there was a very recent debate I participated in the House of Lords where it was a parity between the social services and the treatment services because the carers often take the huge burden for no pay. Of course, they have to give up their work to look after relatives and loved ones who've got dementia. What provision is made for them and how they're given time off and so on to recuperate. So there's those considerations that are they have come to they have been there in debates. Now whether they should feature even more, whether people should, of course, that's always the case, but they're the kind of issues that really it's where um, advances in science for healthcare impacts more widely on society and on just implementation. Yeah. So for a lot of science, if it's very exotic, say you wanted, well, I've just heard this recent transplant for Parkinson's disease to enable people to this infusion pump, how you're going to ensure that everyone gets it, how you're going to ensure who are the people that need it most. And I assume, I don't know how much it will cost, I assume it's not cheap to do something that's highly technical. So now we're living in the 21st century with technology being as whizzy as it is. It's not like the old days of beginning in 1948 where things were simpler to treat people with, as opposed to now where there is that impact, not only of the expensive technology, but possibly ethically as well. If one thinks about stem cell implants, for example, or something like that, some people might have ethical issues with that. So there's a whole wider range of societal issues, I think, that we need. It's very timely you're flagging on here.
Yes,
Mm.
and obviously artificial intelligence in healthcare and the ethical issues related to that are often mentioned.
Mhm.
And to that point, how do you see the role of policymaking into shaping innovation?
I I'm delighted that in the House of Lords there's lots of biomedical people. And I think that's one of its huge strengths compared to, say, America. I don't know about in France. The House of Commons, I think, hasn't got so many, but the more one can have scientists at each level and actually participating in government and policy making and politics, then that has to be a good thing, as opposed to being ivory tower boffins, which is why all my life I've engaged in outreach, even before I started the company, because I think it's very important that you actually are integrated with society, not just some expensive luxury that's there on the outside in some ivory tower.
Yeah. So how do you see your role as an entrepreneur at the House of Lords? What do you think is the impact that you're making?
Well, there's a huge rule. You have to declare interest. So there's no way I can raise funds for my own company when I'm there. As soon as you make a speech, if it's on that subject, I have to say I declare an interest as CEO and founder of Neuro-Bio. That's absolutely clear. But I think it does help having that combination now of a science background, a biomedical background, and at the same time, dare I say it, after 10 years, an entrepreneurial background, and realizing how at the end of the day, one has to consider budgets, one has to consider rolling things out, one has to consider how you're going to raise the money, and those things which 10 years ago I wouldn't have been speaking about, now I feel I can bring to the party for what it's worth.
Yes, and also I guess there's an element of the impact of the regulatory pathway onto how quickly you can move as well.
Oh, well, that's what I'm personally experiencing at the moment, because we have a drug that we are wanting to get sent through the IND regulatory phases, and it's not an easy journey or a cheap one.
Yeah, especially when there are changes in that regulatory also.
Well, I'm just at the very beginning now of the learning curve for doing this. But, it's very exciting to think that these dreams that I had when I was even an academic actually could be taking the shape physically of a product that could actually benefit someone. It's an amazing thought. It's a good reason to get up in the morning.
That's a fascination that a lot of people, we all have with that innovation, right? And improving, patient outcomes, obviously. And just to finish, Susan, I'd love to know, is there one subject that in the debates in the House of Lords, something that you would love to be able to participate in and waiting for it to come up?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Well, in the past, there was one that did have traction, and I feel a sense of told you so, which is the impact of technology on how people are thinking and feeling. And when I first spoke to that in 2009, it was Baroness says computers rot the brain, and I was vilified in many ways. Now, of course, it seems to be universally accepted that this is a serious social problem. I'd like to see that perhaps revisited again, but I think the case is now proven. Probably something about innovation in scientific research I would like, because I feel at the moment we are in a risk-averse era compared to when I first started, where people are mindful, especially in the public sector, that they're using taxpayers' money. So the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater. Yes, they screen out the really stupid, bad suggestions, but in order to look good on committee and in order to play safe, you don't take a risk. And I think having something on risk management, that would be quite interesting.
I hope for you it will come up soon then. And yeah. Well, thank you very much, Susan, for sharing with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Esther. Yeah, great pleasure. Thank you.